An important theme in my book series is sophistry, um, which is really prevalent in the upper classes, I should say the aristocracy, in the sort of fictional world that I've created. And just in case anybody hadn't watched my previous videos, the book series that I'm writing currently is about a futuristic dystopia that is governed by intellectuals who are following in the footsteps of a very corrupt aristocracy. Well, I should mention that actually that the intellectuals are living in the United States, governing the United States, but the corrupt aristocracy was in Iceland, and tried to overpower Europe actually centuries ago in the 12th century. And there's this ideological rift between what the aristocracy thinks of as utopianism versus reason. Like the aristocrats are on the side of reason, and they are actively fighting against utopianism, in which is particularly prevalent in the world of art and literature, which they think is a fairy tale land that is impractical. But this is an example of the sophistry, and this is that John Rowe, who is the title character in the entire series. The series is called The Fall of John Rowe. He is the one that got this whole movement started within the aristocracy, committing horrible crimes, dragging huge, at least some portions of Iceland into destitution, sort of working against the monarchical republic that is actually interested in people's freedom and people's free will, and helping develop a fair, stable, balanced society where the majority does not overrule the minority, which is something I've discussed before. But John Rowe is one of the main culprits of committing these horrible crimes, really against humanity and against children in particular. And which I won't go into too much graphic detail about, but basically, centuries later, intellectuals pick up on this sort of fake aristocratic ideology and adopt it for themselves. And this is another example of the modern day sophistry, but there's different levels here, and there are actually examples of this that you see in other films and other literature, like the movie Idiocracy, for example. That's like the first tier, and like the hierarchy, right? That the first tier is below sophistry. It's like the completely illiterate, the dumbed down, the clueless, the sort of the sedated, the lazy, the kind of the pig-headed. I mean, all of that is like in the first tier, and then above that, sophistry ranks and controls that. And this is a similar kind of hierarchy that I want to put in my own book series. And then, of course, the other tier, which I'm not even sure where it belongs in the hierarchy, but it's a rebellious tier that's obviously working against the evils that are happening, which is what Edmund, who was a child prodigy, a composer, living in the 12th century in my book series, is actively fighting against. That he's one of the utopians, which is this derogatory term for people who are more rebellious in spirit, perhaps, and they are they're trying to look beyond the sort of the manipulation, the distortion of language, and for political and social purposes. And even John Rowe's appearance of being gaunt, and many of his fellow aristocrats of being almost kind of sickly looking, like either gaunt or reeking of brandy, or being John Rowe even being described as if he could be a homeless guy when he's standing near the opera house where Edmund contributes many of his own musical masterpieces to. And in that sense, that gaunt appearance is supposed to identify or personify death. In that sense, that spirit, that sort of anti-humanist and also ultimately anti-human kind of spirit that takes away any actual meaning in mortality as well. Like, as I've mentioned, many of the aristocrats don't believe that there's any heaven or anything, and that's also another very manipulative principle that they use to their own advantage.